Hello and welcome to episode 122 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
I'm James Whittingham. This week, Consumer Reports survey shows 14% of U.S. car buyers would definitely buy an EV. 22% would seriously consider it. And 64% are old people with Facebook accounts.
The world's largest sand battery has come online in Finland.
New research shows gas and diesel vehicles are more likely to spontaneously catch fire than the pre-recall Chevy Bolt EV, but about the same rate as 1980s metal band drummers.
Germany is worried that Russia may cut off their supply of natural gas. Environmentalists are worried Russia won't cut off their supply of natural gas. It's really just a no-win situation.
All that and more on this mid-July edition of the Clean Energy Show. Brian, I'm afraid, for medical reasons, I have to ask you every week now, because you were 95% 2 weeks ago from COVID recovery with brain fog, 99% last week. I figure we'll work in the percentiles now. 99.0 last week. Where are we this week?
I am at 100%.
Bull crap. There's no way. How many fingers am I holding up? None. Really? Well, that's good news.
Yeah, no, I'm good. It's, I think everything is settled. I mean, you never know. I mean, nobody knows the long-term side effects, but so far, so good.
No, your kidney might jump out of your throat for all you know. I mean, no one really knows. Did you count the days till you were 100%? Do you have an idea of how many days it took to get to 100%? This is a 4-vaxxed person here, people.
Yeah, no, but I guess it was 2 weeks ago was the first episode back. So, it was 2.5 weeks or so where I was still feeling something like that.
Well, I've got nothing in my personal life, which is probably a good thing. Nothing's fallen off.
All right, well, I got a couple of things. First of all, the Tesla annual shareholder meeting is coming up. Yeah. And they are, after COVID now, or theoretically after COVID, opening it up to in-person meetings. So I thought I would put my name into the lottery. They have a lottery for I'm a Tesla shareholder. So you can put your name into the lottery to see if you can get invited to the shareholder meeting. And I did not get invited.
Oh, another lottery not won by Brian Stockton. That's too bad.
But, there is, in the email that went out from Tesla, it said that there's 6 million Tesla shareholders. Could that be right?
Maybe.
It's, so obviously, not
after the way the stock went up, I'm imagining everybody who owns stock got into Tesla. How could you not? I mean, it was.
Yeah, anybody who's a stock buyer, maybe you've got just a handful of shares or something. But
sure.
In any case,
nobody wants to be left out. What would you have done if you'd won that lottery?
Well, I think I would have gone. It's coming up fairly soon, so, I would have had to check into plane tickets and everything. And
so you'd have to go to Austin, Texas?
Yeah, it's in Austin, and
stay there for a couple days.
I just recovered from COVID, so I feel invincible.
Okay, well, there's new variants emerging out of China. Good luck with that. What else is new?
Okay, so remember a few weeks ago on the podcast, you had a harrowing story where you were in your local co-op home store and you got into an altercation with somebody who was bad-mouthing electric vehicles and saying they were dumb and they cost more to charge than gas vehicles cost, fill out. Anyway, I've got a similar story from my hair salon.
Oh, dear.
And I won't get into all the details, but it was a very similar kind of experience. I was just sitting in the waiting area, and then I had to listen to the guy who was ahead of me, and I'm not sure what set him off, but the first thing I heard was, and they're indoctrinating our children. And at that point, your ears perk up, of course. But I was actually kind of relieved to hear it was climate change. Like, it really could have been something. It could have been something much worse than that.
So climate change is indoctrinating children. How so?
Well, it's I mean, it was very weird because, like, I don't know what set him off. Like, he basically just sat down in the chair and this stuff started spewing out of his mouth. So I think maybe he saw my Tesla on the way in because my Tesla was parked right in front. And I thought, actually, maybe that's the thing that set off the guy when you were at the co-op. Maybe he saw your Nissan Leaf coming in, and maybe that set him off.
Maybe. I guess. I mean, nothing was going on that day. That night, rather.
But it was just, it was a lot of, it was basically oil industry talking points. Like, that comb you're using here, that's made out of plastic, and plastic's made out of oil. Where do people think this stuff comes from? And
that makes no sense. It drives me crazy. That is so pervasive around here. We'll make the freaking comb out of cardboard, or I'm happy to make things out of oil for a while as long as we don't burn it. And there's alternatives on the way.
Yeah.
The argument that your cell phone, which our political leaders have said is made out of plastic, therefore oil good, is utter BS. And the world is burning, Brian. It's going down the tubes, and these idiots who subscribe to this crap are saying that we should keep burning oil because we need it for our cell phones cases. Come on.
Yeah, and as we summarized last week, even if climate change is fake, all this stuff generates pollution. Why would we voluntarily generate more pollution when there's a clean solution? So then it was a lot of stuff about jobs and like oil has created so much prosperity. Why do people want to throw this all away? Because
go to hell.
Jobs are going to be lost.
Go straight to hell.
And
if you're listening, dude, go to hell. This is from me, James Whittingham. Go to hell. You're an idiot. And
I don't know. I really thought we were past this kind of era. Like to think that you could, and then. That my hairdresser cutting his hair, like she just kind of nodded and, yes, okay, yeah, sure, just like she's getting paid by him. Like, what is she going to
Well, most people haven't dipped their toes into this stuff. They don't know. But they see the threat of what's going on. And it's like, why would we hate oil? Because it's ruining the world. Because your kids won't be able to live in it. Because Yosemite is burning right now. That's why. You moron. Come on.
Yeah. And then there was some stuff about electric vehicles, which again was why I thought maybe he was set off by the Tesla in the parking lot. Like, I have nothing against electric vehicles, but I'd have to charge it 3 times before I came in to the city. He was from a rural area and he was into the city for the day. But the experience was very similar to your experience. But I remembered the Prime Directive. Do you watch Star Trek?
Yeah.
You remember the Prime Directive?
Yes, it's probably the only thing I remember.
Non-interference. Remember the Prime Directive. And
don't interfere with alien species.
So it was not my place to say anything. My hairdresser's just getting her job done.
Yeah.
And so, I didn't say anything and until I was just leaving and my car was right outside the window. So I said to my hairdresser, oh, by the way, that's my electric car. They're fantastic. And then we had a quick, 2 or 3 minute discussion about, how do you charge it? How does that work? And where do you, all that kind of thing.
How much does it cost to charge it?
I gave her a really good tip, so I'm hoping I won the discussion. I'm hoping I won the debate.
Well, I doubt this guy lives more than 400 kilometers or 250 miles away because you're not going to. Your hairstylist isn't that good, right? I mean, there's no point in it. You were getting your hair cut at home until now. Yeah, and I don't know. I just really thought that we were past this. Like that seems like a relic from the 70s where like you get into a cab and the cab driver starts spouting his political opinions at you. It's Facebook.
Like
it's Facebook.
It's Facebook in person. Yeah. Like it was just very weird to me that this guy could just start spouting this stuff and he did it just assuming that everybody would agree with him. And that's why I said I was slightly relieved that it ended up to be climate change. It could have been something much worse than that. And the other thing is, my hairdresser is the fastest hairdresser ever. Like she can do a basic men's haircut in 6 minutes. I timed it one time. Yeah. That's pretty good. Like he just sat down and for 6 minutes just spouted oil industry talking points. And it was disturbing. And the effect was very much like when you see this stuff online, which is why, I've cut back on social media and stuff because it sort of generates like a fight or flight kind of response because here's this guy advocating publicly for continuing to destroy the planet. And it, like you want to get up and punch him, like as a fight or flight kind of thing. It's very kind of unnerving. And if we spend too much time on social media, we just continually get riled up.
Well, if I spent any time on social media reading this crap, I'd be dead. Honestly, my heart would not take it.
Yeah, but remember the Prime Directive, protect your health.
But Brian, I was at the hardware store. There was no one there, and the guy said, electric vehicles cost way more than gas vehicles to fill up. Was I going to stay quiet? No, I could not. I could not.
If I was in the...
I violated the Prime Directive. I'm sorry, Captain Kirk.
If I was in the chair next to him, I might have said something, but I was apart in the waiting area.
You should have said, hey, come for a ride in my Tesla. Yeah. Garbage eating. Probably be scared to. He wouldn't want to face reality. That's, somebody that I'm acquainted with on Twitter said to me, I don't know if he listens to the show or not. If he does, hello, Chris, said that this video that's going around a lot lately is a TED Talk saying that the carbon footprint of EVs are worse than gas cars. And this is a smart guy who did the TED Talk, but it's 2 years old and it's making its comeback again thanks to the oil industry. Probably got to give it a little boost.
Yeah.
But Clean Technica did a big debunking on it, and partially the data is old, and partially it's made up of ridiculous assumptions, like you'll only own the car for a short period of time and things like that. And, by God, you and I have solar panels on your roof. If you're really concerned about electric cars and the environment, put solar panels on your roof if you can. Chances are, if you can afford an electric car these days, by the way, Brian, the Chevy Bolts are starting to flow in, but they're just the EUVs, the bigger versions, the more expensive versions. So I might be able to sit in one of these days and get that rolling. We'll see.
Yeah. No, definitely keep us posted on that.
Well, Derek Green, last week we mentioned his tweet about how great it was being in nature with an EV. And so I posted a clip of us talking about that. And he says, that's so funny. I literally scared an elk as we were leaving the campground. My wife was driving the Tesla, and I was driving our diesel truck, which towed the trailer. And it didn't move until I came around the corner. It stayed still for the Tesla and got scared of the diesel. We're going to talk more about that sort of topic later in the show. Steve says, your segment about wildfires being started by electrocuted birds rings true. I once happened to be looking out my office window and witnessed a crow or raven become a column of fire when it landed just on the wrong transformer across the street.
Wow.
So that's quite a thing to see out your office window. Kind of wakes you up.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah, so Consumer Reports did a survey. We're always talking about where are people at, are attitudes changing? Well, 14% are definitely going to buy an EV for their next vehicle. 22% are seriously considering it. So Consumer Reports put some money into some polling. And Brian, interestingly, I watched the local news the other day, and I found something interesting. Actually, a Boeing Dreamliner, a fairly big jet, landed in our city directly from Ukraine with Ukrainian immigrants. And it was flown by, and I can't remember his name, Argentinian actor and film director. Apparently, the film industry does well down there that you can buy your own Dreamliner because he owns the jet and flies it around. He's
wow.
He's done well. I know you're a film director and film professor, retired, and I haven't seen you fly one jet, not even a small one. So he's doing quite well. Man. And he had a mural on the side of the jet of the so-called Napalm Girl, the famous photograph from Vietnam War that changed attitudes of the young girl walking without clothes away from a napalm blast. And she was actually on that plane. She came along for the ride. That very person is now a Canadian citizen and an advocate for peace. No better person for it. And so she gave some talking about that too. And it was quite remarkable for her, because we live in a little city where nothing happens. But this seemed such a weird, you know, the guy, Wayne Mantica, who covers these stories usually covers potholes and things like that. But now this is quite an interesting story he was covering. So then, and then I also learned our power rates are going up 8%. I'll talk about that in a second, our electricity rates. But I have a clip here from it, and here's a quiz for you, Brian. They're talking to a Ukrainian woman and her brother. What do you think is the first thing they thought about Western society? Can you guess? Because it relates to our show.
No, I was going to say something about seeing the wheat fields when they flew in or something.
Well, it's the same as Ukraine. But you know what's different?
Well,
because Ukraine is very similar to Saskatchewan. They do a lot of wheat farming there, right? Which is why we've had so many Ukrainian immigrants over the 120 years that we've existed. It was the size of our vehicles. Here's a clip.
When the pair arrived on Canadian soil Monday, they noticed how big things are here compared to their home.
I like here everything.
Аеропорту він, wow, які великі, huge cars.
Yeah, so agriculturally, same as the country of Ukraine, but our North American taste for big vehicles, it's a war. It's a cold war of big vehicles. If your neighbor gets a big vehicle, you want one. You don't want to be hit by a bigger vehicle than yours. You get a bigger one. It's just, I don't know. It's not necessary.
And you've probably had this same experience as me, where you're in like a parking lot and you can't find your car because it's hidden behind another gigantic vehicle that's so big it obscures it.
Okay, I've got another tweet here. It says, "Hi guys, have a question for Brian. You gave the price of a panel change from 100 amp to 200 amp. Thanks for that. Do you have an estimate from going gas to electric? I assume you're getting a heat pump. If so, what type? Is geothermal worth it right now? Thanks." Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think we have a letter later in the show about this, so I think we can kind of continue this discussion later. Sure. But it's a tricky situation. It's a tricky issue. It's, definitely in the kind of, if you can go with like just an electric heat pump system, like, then you're $5,000 or $10,000. If you're going geothermal, that's more like $30,000 or more. But let's pick this discussion up at the end of the show.
Okay, well, our buddy Fred at Electric just posted a video of the jet ski, the electric jet ski. We've been talking about this for years, since the beginning of the show. This was on the way, because this company makes snowmobiles, like, that you would use in winter, electric. And this is the same idea of being in nature and not having gas fumes, because they put out a lot of gas fumes. You could smell them from the shore. And they're noisy as hell. I mean, the new ones are a lot less noisy than they used to be, but they're still annoying. And he tested one, and apparently it's incredibly powerful. And he didn't even get the most powerful setting on it. He basically got 2/3 of the way there, because the most powerful setting, which most people are afraid to use who are testing these, because I would be too. Like, your face hitting the water at 100 kilometers an hour, 60 miles an hour is not going to be any fun. But you could charge these suckers overnight at 110 volts. They got level 2 charging if you have that available on the dock. A lot of docks actually do, I'm told. I'm not a seafaring person. They have, like cars, they have fast acceleration, they're quiet, and there's no fumes. So this is another thing about being in nature. And let's just play a clip and listen very closely at the first few seconds of this clip, because all I hear is the waves. I don't hear the jet ski. This is from fairly close proximity. Listen to the first few seconds and then the rest of it.
The Taiga Orca, an electric jet ski. All right, when it comes to motorsport, it's all about having fun, and you can definitely have fun on a gas-powered jet ski, there's no doubt about it, but it comes with a lot of noise, which might bother your neighbors, and you're also still burning gas. With this thing, it's not only quiet, but you have the great feeling of having fun in a beautiful environment like this one without feeling it with emissions, and also burning some money in your pockets, because we all know that gas ain't cheap these days.
Yeah, he was in Montreal testing that, and what fun they look like they're having. And I can't believe, like, I knew they were going to be quiet, but I couldn't hear the thing.
Yeah.
You know, I could not hear it. So that's a good thing. I mean, if you're in nature, you don't want to screw up nature with your gas fumes and your noise, right? You're killing a few fish, I'm sure, zooming along the surface, but yeah.
This is my main complaint about the cottage, about going to the lake, is that it's always ruined by these loud vehicles. And in the summer, it's jet skis, and in the winter, it's snowmobiles. And they're super loud, and they're super noisy. And if you're close enough, you get the fumes as well, which is super unpleasant.
Well, by the time your kids take over the cottage and put you in the home, they'll have a different experience maybe than you did growing up out there and have right now. They'll have a nice, quiet, clean, Shangri-La environment.
And have you seen the electric hydrofoil surfboards?
Yes. They seem too good to be true, but yes.
That's super cool. It's a electric surfboard that is a hydrofoil, so it floats off the water with the drive part underneath the water. Looks fantastic.
It looks like a lot of fun. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
And I'm, of course, way too old for it, I think. My joints don't bend like they used to. So, yeah, like I said before, our power rates where we live are going up 8%. They haven't gone up in a while. Because when I got my solar installed, they said, well, it's been going up 5-6% every year. It's going to keep going up. So then you start to make the payback once the rates go up. If they didn't go up, I wouldn't make the payback very quickly. So now I'm going to start making payback, you too, and everybody who has solar panels around here. But 8% between September and April. By April, it's another 4% on top of a 4% in the fall. The interesting thing, Brian, is that the Crown Corporation applied for the rate increase to offset increasing fuel and power costs. See, they're not a very green grid. And you know what? They've got hydro power is down 30%. Because of drought or climate change, however you want to look at it. And we've had droughts before, and we'll have droughts again, but hydro is already more expensive than, say, wind and solar and batteries in a lot of cases, and it's going to get worse because of climate change. Like, it's something we don't talk about very often.
No, and like the water level of the Hoover Dam, there was a story recently about the Hoover Dam, and the water level has just been slowly dropping over the years. And I don't think it's in danger of like stopping to operate any particular time soon, but at some point in the future, the Hoover Dam just might not work because there's not enough water there.
And our local newspaper columnist wrote a story about the federal government not realizing that we're flat and we have no hydro. Well, our hydro does not come from mountains.
The flat prairie.
There are rivers that run everywhere in the world. Those rivers get dammed, get turned into hydro. They move. They have an urge to go towards the ocean. I don't know if he was being sarcastic. I was reading it early on the Saturday morning. But is this an indication? Did you read it? That particular column?
But I mean, certainly there's no hydro directly near us. You've got to go farther away. But yeah, we do have hydro.
We do have hydro, and it is down 30% because of drought. So you can't rely on hydro as a base load. I'm not, dissing hydro. It's great if you have it. I'm just saying it's going to be costed out, and it's going to get worse because the cost of it goes up if the output goes down.
Yeah, and you mentioned one of the main benefits of having your own solar panels, which is you pay for the system. Maybe you get a loan to pay for the system, but those costs stay consistent. Like once the system is installed, it continues to generate power at the exact same cost. So if you got a loan for your system, your payment is the exact same. It's not going to go up 8% with the electricity rates that are going up 8%.
So with the carbon tax that we have federally, and the rates going up, at least they didn't blame clean energy for this because I thought they were going to. So it's the gas prices that have gone up because they're using a lot of gas. You mentioned recently they just built a new gas generator, which is, and by the way, A lot of toxins from those gas generators, carcinogenic toxins, not something I'm a fan of.
I'm going on the record as saying I'm against carcinogens.
Okay. Bold, Brian Stockton. Bold position. Not afraid to take a position on that. So we've talked about the city of Swift Current as a charging location. You know, you just went to Banff from here, and that was one of the stops.
Yep.
In our vast Canadian prairie, you had to stop in a small city, which has a Tesla supercharger, but also like 3 branded gas station level 3 chargers as well. And people have been through that town and found that none of them worked. None of the non-Tesla ones worked, and they were stranded.
Yeah.
And that's horrible, and it shouldn't happen, and I'm wondering why that's happening. But anyway, there was a big power outage because of a storm a few days ago, and it was out in the middle of the night until noon. So one of the people out there bought an F-150 Lightning all-electric pickup truck.
Wow.
First in Saskatchewan, I think, first where we live. And he found a Nissan Leaf owner stranded there at 5 in the morning, and that person could not charge even at noon when the power went back on, because all it was level 2. Because the charger didn't work when the power went back on as the way they were supposed to, so they could only charge at level 2. So he put himself on PlugShare. That's the app where you can see where all the plugging stations are. And, you know, years ago I put myself on PlugShare just in case somebody was stranded and they wanted to use an electrical outlet in the early days of EVs, right?
Yeah.
Well, he's put his truck on there. So if you're stranded, he can charge you at almost 10 kilowatts from his F-150 Lightning truck.
That's fantastic.
As a very generous man.
Yeah.
And by the way, he was also powering his home and his shop, so the work continued in his business when the power went out. So screw you, naysayers.
Yeah, so he must have got one of those Ford, home energy things that allows his truck to interface with the house, I guess.
Yes, presumably. Or he, maybe he's an electrician and he did it himself. I don't know. Or maybe he just used it as a generator and ran enough things in his home. I don't know for sure that he has the system. That's hard to say. Let's get on with the show.
Okay, so Finland, where we have at least one listener, they are now online with the world's first large-scale sand battery. James, do you know what a sand battery is?
I have no idea, Brian, and I have to admit I'm extremely curious.
Well, here's the thing. You take a bunch of sand and you heat it up to 500 to 600 degrees Celsius, and it's a way to store energy. It seems crazy, but apparently this is a thing, and this is now online. It can discharge a maximum of 100 kilowatts of heat power with a total energy capacity of 8 megawatt hours, equating to about 80 hours of storage duration. And so they want it to scale to 1,000 times bigger. They want to build one that's 8 gigawatt hours. Sand battery. Now, the only thing I don't know, because there's lots of sort of alternative battery strategies. Pumped hydro is kind of the biggest one and the most famous one, where you essentially pump water to a high location when you have lots of excess clean energy power, and then you can let it, drain back down to run a turbine and generate water at night or something like that. So, but there's other schemes. I don't know which one is the best, but, here we go. This is a sand battery.
Okay. I did not know that sand retained heat. Did not know that. Because if you go to the beach, Brian, and you dig a little down, it's very cold right away.
Interesting.
So it's not absorbing the heat from the sun very well.
But the top sand
I have to
absorbs it well.
Is hot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did no idea. When I was a kid, my earliest memory of a green mind was that I had this idea, because my dad was complaining about energy prices. My parents were living almost paycheck to paycheck. Like they were not wealthy, they weren't poor, but they liked to complain about, leaving the lights on and stuff like that. And so I was conscious of that, and I decided that, well, wouldn't it be great if in our very cold climate we could have a 1 yard thick wall and fill it with sand? This was my idea because I was building Lego houses back then, and other things. And I thought, well, I later in life learned that sand's not very good insulating, so it's not a good insulator by itself. It has no significant R value.
Well, again, this is why I
energy.
wonder. I mean, my instinct is we'll eventually just settle on batteries because battery production is ramping up all over the world, and there's a new battery plant opening every other week. So I kind of feel like all of these solutions will eventually just go to batteries. But, who knows? I'm not a sand engineer.
By the way, maybe our local newspaper columnist was confused because we can't store. Maybe he was confusing hydropower with water storage, pumped hydro, because you do need elevated places to do that. Generally you're using gravity for the water to come back down.
That would be difficult for us, but we probably do have abandoned mine shafts where the water could be pumped into there or something.
And also, any place you have a dam, you can pump, with high solar output during the day, use electricity to pump it back upstream through pipes on shore, and then it goes through again. And if they're, that's just something you can do. It's not the whole thing. The EU is clamping down on fake plug-in electric vehicle models. That's PHEVs, we call them. They're hybrid vehicles that also have a bit bigger battery that you can drive and charge. You can plug it in. Most hybrids you can't plug in, but now they're starting to make them like that. I considered getting one myself. The Chevy Volt with a V used to have one, had a range of 52 miles. GM engineers were concerned that some of those cars might never use the onboard internal combustion engine, and this is something I never realized, but they programmed it so that the engine started every 3 months so that you could lubricate it. I didn't know that was the case.
No, and gasoline eventually goes bad too. So like after a year or two of just sitting in a tank, the gasoline, doesn't work right.
But many of the PHEV models recently sold in Europe use gasoline engine almost constantly. This is a complaint I had when test driving the Prius Prime in minus 14 Celsius weather, is that the engine came on for heating and for power. And the dream is to buy a PHEV and use it around town as an EV. And then boom, it's a gasoline vehicle with good efficiency on the highway, and there's no range concerns or anything. But that's not the case. The fact is these things have emissions, and they're going to make that clear to people, but not for 5 years. It's going to take them 5 years to do it. By then, nobody's going to be buying PHEVs anymore. So it begins this week in some respects, because the Transport and Environment Department is reporting that the EU has agreed to assess emissions based on how much they actually emit. So they're going to start assessing them now. And we all assume that they don't have emissions, but they do. Sometimes it's for power. Sometimes it's for just to heat the engine up in case you need it. They'll start the engine in case you need it. They don't want to start cold if you're going on the highway and going on an on-ramp and they're using power from the combustion engine combined with the electric. And by the way, I've driven the Prius, normal Prius lately, and it's a nice car.
Yeah. You
know what makes it nice? The electric motor.
Yeah.
Because even when you are using a gas engine, the electric motor is doing a lot of the work, and you still get some of that smoothness and some of that quietness, and but it stays done. It's time to move to full EVs, and that's what I'm hoping to do. So the emissions engineer at T&E said that for years, emissions of plug-in hybrids were based on unrealistic driving conditions. The new rules reflect the reality that PHEVs pollute far more than car makers claim. Governments, which still incentivize the purchase of these fake electric vehicles, need to stop these harmful claims. Talking to you, Toyota. Although they're not the worst as far as when the vehicle comes on. I mean, the first generation of Chevy Volt used to come on quite a bit all the time, even in cold weather, but then they improved on that. So that's my story for that.
Okay, so we have a story from Germany, and this is from The Guardian. Germany braces for nightmare of Russia turning off the gas for good. So every year around this time, and I believe this is starting today, there's a pipeline that flows natural gas from Russia to Germany, and Germany is one of the biggest customers for Russian gas. And they shut it down every year for some maintenance, and it takes 10 to 14 days for maintenance. And the Germans are worried that perhaps the gas will not flow again once this, period is up because of the tensions, because of all of the issues happening with the war in Ukraine. So, and there's a Canadian connection to this. On Saturday, Canada said, after consultation with Germany and the International Energy Agency, that it would issue a temporary exemption to sanctions against Russia in order to allow the return from Montreal of a repaired Russian turbine that's required for the maintenance work to be carried out. So some kind of turbine is needed for this pipeline, and it's being repaired in Canada. And, they had to make a temporary exemption because, Germany will be in fairly serious trouble if this gas doesn't start to flow again. But, of course, environmentalists are saying, no, we shouldn't have made that concession. Canada shouldn't have broken the sanctions to send off this turbine because, we're just prolonging the inevitable. We need to get off Russian oil and gas.
This is the struggle that's going on now in a lot of different ways between fossil fuels and clean energy. And there's that reluctance to let go. And, the scaredness, they're scared to let go.
And there could be Russian businesses and homes without heat. So it is a genuine, serious issue.
Well, who else is upset by that? Ukraine. They're not happy at all.
Yeah.
They're kind of pissed off about that. I would understand they would be. So, Clean Technica has a story, an update on the Ford internal combustion engine vehicles fires and recall. And in May, Ford recalled 40,000 Ford Expedition and Lincoln Navigator SUVs after telling owners to park them outdoors and away from homes and buildings. That's just what Chevy did with their Bolt, right? Mm-hmm. And on Friday, the company expanded that recall to cover more than 66,000 vehicles from the 2021 model year after getting reports of 5 more fires. And that's not even the half of it, says Clean Technica. The company also announced Friday that it is recalling yet another 100,000 SUVs in the U.S. alone for a different problem that also causes engine fires. 2 different problems in these vehicles that can cause it to start on fire in your garage, in your house. And then people say, oh, EVs catch on fire. You better not drive an EV. No.
Well, in related news, there's also a Ford recall for the Mach-E for a battery connector that can cause the car to lose power. So in the meantime, they have issued a software patch so they can do over-the-air software updates at Ford now for their electric vehicles. And I think it just reduces the power of the vehicle to help avoid this problem happening, but they're still going to have to come into the dealer and get this part fixed because it has happened where these vehicles have just completely lost all power except for the 12-volt battery. So the drivers are still able to pull the car over because the power steering and the brakes still work.
Yeah, and by the way, the local EV association reported the stock of EV vehicles. Mach-E's are quite prevalent. They're around a lot of different places. And that includes, really rural car dealerships, like really small town, practically villages, serving an agricultural area, have them. They're around, so you can get them, which is a good thing because that's what we want. We want the availability of these things to be there. And Ford seems to be doing a good job, and maybe the F-150 will be like that in a couple of years, right?
Hopefully.
Anyway, a leading industry analysis for Guidehouse Insights says that only 7 Chevy Bolts had spontaneously caught fire by September 2021, or about 0.006% of those on the road. And by comparison, the National Fire Protection Association said 212,000 gas and diesel vehicles caught fire in 2018 in the U.S. That's about 0.07%. In other words, way more. Way.
Yes.
What is that, 100 times more per capita?
There's an extra zero there. It's 0.006 for the EV, 0.07 for the gas and diesel cars.
Right. Okay. So it's what, 10 times as likely? Your gas car is 10 times as likely to catch on fire. Say that at the hairstylist next time. Let's see how it goes. Pull out a fact sheet. Carry a large binder with tabs on it. All right, let's move on.
Okay, so Power Magazine is reporting that France is set to take over one of their major power producers. Now, the government already owned a large part of this energy supplier. It's EDF. But they're going to take over the whole thing 100% because they're facing delays and cost overruns on new nuclear plant projects in France and the UK as well. I believe they're involved with the Hinkley Point C project in the UK, which is a nuclear power station that's been years and years behind schedule. So, yeah, this we've talked many times about how private industry is not interested in nuclear, and that's because it's a bad business proposition. So where nuclear does exist in France, it looks like it's going to have to be taken over by the government in order to prevent it from shutting down, because they need the power, and especially in this era of trying to get off Russian oil and gas, now is not the time to shut down these nuclear power plants.
All right, thank you, Brian. And coming up on the show, it's the lightning round, where we skim through a few more headlines really fast. And it's time to dip into the mailbag. Why don't we dip into the mailbag? What have we got for this week? We got a letter from Illinois, the great state of Illinois.
Yeah. So Robin from Illinois wrote to...
Sorry. You never slip up, but that was a good one.
He wrote it to us.
COVID fog at 99% again. We're moving back the dial.
Okay, so I've got this project. I'm trying to electrify everything, and I have two places to do it, my own home and this rental property that we own. And the rental property has a gas boiler with radiator heat, and then my house is a normal sort of forced air furnace, and both run off natural gas. And it's just been a hell of a project trying to figure out how to replace these with electricity-only options. And, the big problem around here, and Illinois gets cold for sure, but we definitely get colder here, as we frequently mention. We're down to minus 40 Celsius, which is also minus 40 Fahrenheit in the winter. So, just an air source heat pump isn't going to kind of cover the whole thing. But so Robin was just sharing some of his research about boiler heat, which is these sort of air to water heat pump options, which is basically like an air source heat pump, but it heats up water, and then you can then supply the radiators in your house. And so Robin is looking at doing this, but the overall temperature is going to be lower. So, I don't know, the existing piping and the existing radiators, there's a question of whether or not this is going to work or not. So, he's just trying to figure that out. And I appreciate sharing the kind of research on this. I think the thing I really need, and I've kind of mentioned this before, but I need a local eco-friendly HVAC installer. So I'm begging, if anybody knows of an eco-friendly HVAC installer here in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada, because this is something I need help with. It's just too difficult and complicated I can't install this stuff on my own. So I got to figure out a way. Now, one way is like you can still do a natural gas hybrid, where you do maybe an air source heat pump with a mini split unit that'll heat and cool the house. But then when it gets below minus 20, then the gas boiler kicks in. Or the alternative is you just have a resistance heater that kicks in when it's below minus 20, which is what we need. But I'm just kind of scared of that because, our winters are long and cold, and the electricity costs are going to be high. But the other thing to factor into this discussion is the carbon tax. So here in Canada, we have a carbon tax. And so, yes, natural gas is still the cheapest choice for heating your home, but the price of it is going to go up every year, basically, because we have a carbon tax that keeps increasing. So, I'm not just making a decision for now in the year 2022. I'm kind of making a decision for 5 years from now, 10 years from now, because it seems crazy at this point in time to go all electricity. So for the rental house, I would maybe do a mini split and then with an electric resistance back heater, sort of backup heater. But then, my electricity costs in the winter would be, well, I don't know, averaged out, my electricity bill would be in the range probably of $400 or $500 a month. But you can subtract the gas bill, which right now is like $140 a month or something like that. So
Right.
if you can get rid of your gas bill completely, then you can always count on that savings. So, it's the water heater as well. So we'd have to figure out how to heat the water with electricity.
Well, listen, the heat pumps do work below -20, but at some point they're not an advantage over a resistive heater. Like they become less efficient.
Yeah.
Below a certain temperature.
No, but plus I think when it hits about -25, they just don't work.
Well, we've gotten letters that say they get down to -30 or something.
I mean, maybe, but
But yeah, again, it's going to be the same as a resistive heater, right? It's going to be 100% of your electricity is going into the heating, rather than what is it, 2 times, 3 times efficient or something like that.
Yeah. So, and of course, somebody asked at the top of the show, what does all this cost? So, I don't know, like in the neighborhood of 10 grand to do like an air source heat pump that'll heat and cool the house, and then a backup resistance heater, maybe a bit more than that. And then in my own house, doing geothermal is the other option, which is a good option for us, again, because it's so darn cold here. Geothermal is a ground source heat pump where, you've got tubes deep in the earth and they extract. It's always warm when you get below, but those are, at least 30 grand for that. I may consider that for my own home. It's not really practical for the rental home. I don't want to spend that much money, and it's got kind of a small yard, but I think it is possible for this house. And then the other factor in all these calculations is the rebate that we get from the federal government. So we have this complicated carbon pricing scheme, which ends up in us getting a check from the government to compensate for it, which is confusing and probably just sounds to people like the federal government is buying votes. But I don't know. Can you explain how this carbon pricing scheme works and why, in the next year, you and I are going to get checks for about $1,100 a year to compensate for the rising price of carbon?
Well, my first year I got something like $900 for a family of 4. My son's now an adult, so he gets his own check. And then the carbon price goes up, so you get a bigger rebate. So 4 Canadian provinces out of 10 refused to come up with a carbon pricing system that the federal government wanted us to do, so the country as a whole could meet our, Paris Accord commitments. And so because we didn't, they forced us. So they came up with a system of their own. And in doing so, we get the rebates 100%, or 90%, depending on the person. And sometimes it's even a bit more. And then I'm sure for you and I, it's a bit more than what we actually pay because we are using electric vehicles and we're using solar on our roof.
Which is the point of all this, because again, if I move to all electric heating in both of my homes, this will eventually pay off in part because we're getting this money back in this, carbon scheme.
Yeah, I'm laughing, man. And there's people buying gas at $2 a liter and, $6 a gallon in the States. It's ridiculous. Anyway, Brian, let's move on. We'll get to the lightning round now because, my God, the show's moved fast this week.
The Clean Energy Show Lightning Round.
Brian, here's some weather for you. For the next week, the temperature is estimated to jump to 40 degrees in, and I quote here, most parts of China. Like, not just one area, but most of frickin' China.
China's very large.
40 degrees, which is what, 100 and some Fahrenheit?
Yeah, just over 100, I think.
All right. So wind and solar now produce more electricity than nuclear for the first time in the United States. We are going to continue on the show to be rattling off benchmarks like that because things are moving, whether the people in your hair salon like it or not. This is an economics-driven thing now. It's the economics have taken over where you want to waste money, put up a coal plant, but you want to save money and make the most profit, use the cheapest electricity, which is now almost everywhere in the world, solar and wind.
There was a story this week on Clean Technica from George Harvey, and I'll just mention the kind of sub-headline in the article, which was, the only thing we have to give up are killing people and wrecking the environment when it comes to clean energy.
And the thing is, Brian, people don't want to give that up.
They don't want to give it up. It's crazy.
They like killing people.
They love it.
They like killing the environment.
They love it.
I don't, it's stupid. And, the pandemic has made people really crazy, myself included, but at least my feet are on the ground. The EU is clamping down on, I covered that one already. According to the Biden administration, Tesla plans to open up its supercharger pilot program in the United States to allow non-Tesla EV owners to charge on the network in the United States. This is from a fact sheet that was acquired from the White House, which noted that this may happen prior to the end of 2022. That's exciting news for non-Tesla EV owners in the States and concerning news for Tesla owners in the States who might want to not face a lineup at their charger.
Yeah, this could end up in lineups. But yeah, there's sort of two aspects to it. In Europe, in some places, the Tesla chargers have two cables where they need two different connectors. So it sounds like Tesla is working on the next generation of supercharger, which will probably have two cables. And if for North America, I would imagine that's CCS and the Tesla connector, because Tesla has its own connector. And they could also be coming up with some kind of adapter. And I think they're going to need that because, there's already thousands of Tesla stations that have been built. So for the future, it sounds like they'll have two connectors. Hopefully they can come up with adapters and get this rolled out soon.
So Tesla's going to become the Shell of gas stations, of electricity charges. It doesn't matter what vehicle you charge. I'm going to pull into the Tesla and get some power and charge up and grab a snack and get on my way.
As we've said many times, they are the most reliable network, the most ubiquitous, so it really makes sense.
Yeah, the question is, though, will it cause lineups and consternation for people like you who own Teslas? That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, but I think they can roll
will
it
the
out.
Tesla app just...
They can roll it out area by
bit,
area.
slowly.
So I think that, like California is a place where they have problems with lineups. So I think, they'll wait maybe until there's more chargers in those very, very busy places.
All right. Speaking of heat pumps, the largest heat pump in the Netherlands, which is 25 megawatts, will use the sewage system as a heat source. Because remember, you can take heat from where there isn't much. You can take, for example, heat from minus 20 degrees Celsius air and turn it into heating your home. Well, sewage, by my recollection, is warm.
Typically, yes.
Shower water and human excrement is generally warm. And if you look at on a cold day in winter in northern climates, you can see the sewage system steaming up from below. And so they're going to use it as a heat source for the Utrecht district heating, upgrading the heat to 75 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, and this is similar maybe to a story we did about a Toronto hospital that's doing a similar thing of trying to harvest heat from the sewer system around Toronto. And I've been to Utrecht. It's a lovely place.
Oh, you lucky bastard.
Yeah.
So I pronounced it correctly then, I hope.
It's probably Utrecht, something like that.
Oh, well, God. I'm staying put. I can't go to Europe. You are building a new cottage one day. Maybe you could run a heat source tube into your lake, because you're lakefront property, and harvest like they do in Toronto.
Interesting.
And just for your cottage. Just a loop of glycerin alcohol and take the heat out of that. If they, regulations have to change, Brian. And generally speaking, the idea about heat pumps is we don't make very many of them right now. We're going to start making them. There's going to be innovation is expected and cost reductions. So if you are an early adopter, it'll be like an electric car. They're going to cost a lot more and maybe do less than they will in 10 years. So hopefully the future heat pumps, once they become mandatory in places, will really take off and the manufacturing will take off. And I'm thinking we're going to get some sort of these days. And finally this week, Brian, because we are somewhat of time, a company in China has also developed a purely solar-powered car. So now there's at least two that we can think of, and it's called the Tianjin solar car. So maybe solar cars will be a thing in the apocalypse, and you can drive around on the power of what sun is left. Anyway, that is our time for this week. If you're new to the show, remember to subscribe on your podcast app to get new episodes delivered every week, and rate and review us whenever possible. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week.